Hello, everybody, and welcome to On the Move with the Caravan football preview. My name is Chris Miller. I'm the head boys basketball coach at St. Pius High School in Festus, as well as the producer of the show, The Coach's Box, and Off the Rails Media. I'm here with Jim Powers, host of High School Sports Caravan. Jim, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's finally here. We're finally able to get things going this week, just not in football, but in all sports. And I know the kids are excited. I know the coaches can't wait to get it going. So, it's like a kid in a candy store or, Christmas morning in that this week. I mean, everybody's ready to just go against somebody else and everything starts to count. So, it's been a great summer for the kids, and I'm excited about what's going to take place this fall.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of jamboree action, a lot of good positive comments from some coaches, for some teams, and I think kids are really gearing up for some week one action. And speaking of week one, there are so many great games that we have lined up for week one. Why don't you talk about a little bit of them?
Well, the big thing is, and it's something that you've started seeing take place over the last maybe 4 or 5 years, is, when I first moved here and first started covering, you didn't see big games in the first week or the second week. It was more like, okay, we're going to pick somebody that we know we can possibly get a win over. That's going to help start things out. But since Misha went to the new playoff format with 9 games and then districts starting in week 10 and the point values and all that stuff, you've kind of seen the trend to where teams are now scheduling up and they're playing very good games early in the season. And I made a comment, last week that this week one this year may be the best opening weekend I've seen in years when it comes to high school football here in the metro area. I mean, when you look at some of the matchups, and we're going to talk about just a few, but there are just so many out there. And I give the coaches a lot of credit. I give the ADs a lot of credit, because they're starting to see that scheduling down a little bit in the early portion isn't going to help them get ready for districts. Now you're playing some great competition early before you get into conference play, and your kids are now going to get that taste of some of the things they're going to see later on down the line when you get to districts and you get into the state playoffs. So, once again, it's just an unbelievable schedule week one. And I really, really think that this helps the kids. It helps the coaches really get ready to get through conference and to get ready for district play later on in the year.
Right. And I think that's the important part about having the point system for the playoffs is there's no cupcakes. There's no easy games, and you have to come ready to play. And that's a good thing. Coaches preach that all the time, that you got to be ready to show up. And with the way it's done now, you have to, just like you said. Talking about one of our week one matchups, we have Seckman at Valley Catholic. What do we know about that, Jim?
Boy, I tell you what, you talk about a Seckman team, and Nick Blair has just done a terrific job with that program, and they got one of the top athletes. I mean, I'm not just talking about quarterback. I'm talking about athletes in the area. And for them to schedule Valley, and, last year there was a lot of talk, why did Valley get bumped from 1 to 3? I know we've talked about it on the coach's box, and it's that championship quotient for the private schools. And so Valley had to kind of schedule up a little bit as well. And for them to open up, welcome Seckman in on week one, Valley is Valley. They are going to be extremely competitive. They are going to punch you in the mouth, but this is a Seckman team that has so many great weapons to their disposal when you start with their quarterback. Then you've got a couple running backs, and they run this wild offense that you don't really know what's going to happen. It's not the spread. It's basically smash mouth football. And I know that's what Valley loves to do. And this is just going to be a great matchup between a pair of teams that are going to get after each other. Seckman on that bubble, not sure if they're going to be Class 5 or if they're going to bump to Class 6, because every year they've kind of been on that bubble a little bit. So it's going to be a great matchup, between two very, very talented teams. And I tell you what, it's a pick'em game for me if you're into that kind of stuff, because honestly, I think either one of these two teams can win this ball game.
Yeah, I would say that's a push game for sure. And I mean, I'm kind of curious to see how Valley, who without the championship factor should be Class 1, is going to compare to the school the size of Seckman and how they're going to match up. I'm sure it's going to be a great game either way. Moving right,
absolutely, absolutely. And you got to remember too, Seckman's football program was dormant for so many years, and over the last couple of years, and like I said, what Nick Blair has done with that program has just been absolutely unbelievable. And when you got, once again, you've got some athletes there, it's really shown where you can get your program going with the right leadership, the right, kids buying into what you want to do. And that's what we've seen out of Seckman over the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's one thing to have talent. It's another thing to have coachable talent and coaches who know how to get the most out of their kids. So, yeah, you can see the progression of Seckman moving right up and how well they're playing and competing. So it's some pretty exciting stuff for them for sure. Festus is going to travel down to St. John to take on the Dragons. What do you got for us there?
Once again, the job that AJ Ofadale has done has just been terrific. He's had some outstanding players. You've seen a few of them on the basketball court, for the Tigers. But, this is a good matchup. St. John's had a couple down years. They're looking to bounce back a little bit. And what a great way to open their season against a Festus Tiger team that a lot of people think is going to win the JCAA and then, make a pretty deep run in the districts. And with the stuff that AJ's done down there with some of the kids, he lost a lot to graduation, but they've got a bunch of youngsters that got some great playing time last year. And once again, you're going to see, a Festus team with some great matchups later on down the line. We saw it last year in a couple instant classics, and you're going to see that again this year because I really think, the I-55 corridor and the JCAA, there's just so many great teams this year. And it kind of gets lost in the shuffle with everything that happens up here in the St. Louis area. Not a lot of people know how good football really, truly is down in Jefferson County. And I think Festus is kind of leading the charge a little bit with that. And, what AJ's done, once again, we go back to what we just said about Seckman and Nick Blair. Great coaches. They can get the best out of their kids. They can get their program and get their stuff in there, and the kids buy into it. And that's exactly what Festus has done. St. John, once again, a young team, but a great way to get things going. If they can knock off Festus, watch out. St. John may be back this year.
Right. It's going to be curious to see what Festus does in replacing at the quarterback position. I mean, they lost a really good player there with the Rickman kid, but it's going to be kind of curious to see how they fill it in and what changes with their playing style.
Yeah, without a doubt. And Rickman was outstanding. I mean, he was one of the best quarterbacks I saw last year. And, big shoes to fill. But knowing the way that AJ Ofadale brings his kids together and works them in practices and all that, I don't think they're going to miss that much of a beat with the youngster that's going to step into those shoes this year.
That'll be very curious to see how that goes. And I think they're from everything I can tell, obviously being in Festus and hearing the buzz from them, I think that they're pretty excited about this season as well. And speaking of we'll stay in Festus. The Brentwood Eagles are going to come and take on the St. Pius X Lancers. We'll be at that game. It's going to be broadcasted by Off the Rails Media this Friday night. So, Jim, go ahead and jump into that. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that one.
Well, once again, Brentwood, new coach, took over late in the game. I mean, they didn't hire their new head coach until the beginning of the end of May, early June. So once again, it was a summer of learning, a summer of building. They're a run-first team. At least that's what they were in the past. It'll be interesting to see what they come out with this year. I'm also interested to see numbers-wise. Brentwood on the lower end of the Class 2 side, typically they'll get 30, 32 kids out. So it'll be interesting to see what the depth of the Eagles is going to be going against a Pius team that, had signs of brilliance last year. There was some games that they just took it to people, but then there were some games that you kind of thought, well, really, where was this team at last week? Or, and I think once again, some young kids, a good veteran core coming back for Pius. And I think the mixing with some of the younger kids, I think this is going to be a fun Pius team to watch throughout the season. And I know, all of us here at Off the Rails are excited about broadcasting those games free for everybody to watch and all that kind of stuff. And they're going to be a lot of fun to keep an eye on throughout the year. But once again, though, you're playing in that tough conference, and there's no cupcakes there, so to say, and
Right.
especially when you look at Herky, that's kind of getting things going in the right direction. You got a Crystal City team that once again, every now and then you'll see them come up and get somebody. Windsor's another team that people better watch out for. So, it'll be interesting to see how the conference plays out. And Pius has to come in and week out with that chip on their shoulder because of what happened at the end of last year. I thought they were going to go a little bit deeper in the playoffs. Unfortunately, they stubbed their toe a little bit at the end. But I really think this is going to be a fun team to watch.
Yeah, and I think replacing the quarterback, Colin Smith, it's a family affair, is going to be replaced by his brother, James Smith. And there might be some similarities between the two. Like I think Colin was a great runner. He made some good throws. I think James is actually probably better at throwing the ball than Colin, and Colin probably be upset because I coached him in basketball for years. You say that, but I'm curious to see how that transition is gonna look. But with all the veteran kids coming back, and I really think that it's going to be a good, fun, athletic team to watch. I agree with you. I think there was times where we looked at them last year and thought, wow, where is this team? And I know, again, personally seeing a lot of their games, I wondered the same thing. But I do believe that they have good coaching. I think the kids play extremely hard. I've actually sat in on a couple of practices just to kind of see how things were going. And I think with Dabrian Moss, who's going to be a big part of the offense, and as well as the defense, playing either defensive end or linebacker. And then the big question mark is filling the hole left by All-State and Division I athlete Nate Rubel, who's now playing in Northern Illinois. What they're going to be able to do with that. And I do believe there's a couple of kids who might fill those shoes, particularly the Lane kid who's a sophomore. He's one to kind of watch, not only as linebacker, but in the running as a running back as well. They have an assortment of backs who are quick and elusive, and it's just going to come down to can they win the battle in the trenches, I believe.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. And once again, with the younger Smith taking the helm, you may see the playbook open up a little bit more, but it's all going to start up front. You've got to have, the dudes up front that are going to be able to do that dirty work. And if they can be successful and they taste some success early in the year, once again, going to be a fun team to follow throughout the season down in Jefferson County.
Absolutely. They're hoping they can capitalize and be I-55 champions again this year. Moving back north again, we have Vashon at Kirkwood. Tell us a little bit about that one, Jim.
What about this game? Two head coaches that played together under Gary Pinkel and Jeremy Macklin and Will Franklin, now head coaches of their own programs, both in their second years. This Kirkwood team, I get a chance to watch all the time. They're fun. They're talented. Darren Ross Brown, it is as dynamic of a running back as you're going to see in the area this year. They got a senior quarterback, but then there's going to be a junior quarterback. They're going to run a couple different guys in there on different packages and different situations. But they're a fun team to watch, and especially defensively as well. They're going to be a team that's going to be real nasty defensively. Vashon, once again, I love what Will Franklin is doing. I love the fact that he has recognized the PH, and I don't want anybody to think this is a knock on the PHL, because it's not, but it's something that I have been saying for years. You've got great PHL teams. Gateway, a couple years ago had a terrific team. But non-conference games, you don't have a lot. If you don't schedule the right non-conference teams, you play your PHL schedule, and then you get in the district, which you'll win your district. But then when you start playing the likes of a North County, you start playing the likes of a Hillsboro, a Park Hills Central. That's always been the stumbling block for anybody coming out of the PHL. And I love the fact that Will scheduled up to play Kirkwood in week 1 to kind of get his kids like, okay, this is what it's going to be like at the end of October, early November. We're going to steamroll the PHL, which they should. There is not a team other than Gateway there's not another team that's going to give them any issues whatsoever in the public high league. So for Will to step in, schedule up, play his buddy over at Kirkwood. In fact, I was talking to Jeremy Macklin earlier this week. He says, "Oh my gosh, me and Will have already talked 5 times in the last 3 days." They're excited about the game. They're excited for their kids, and they should be, because I think, once again, it's a great week 1 matchup with 2 of the best teams in the metro area.
Yeah. And it's funny because, again, like you talked about earlier about the point system and how important that is, this game is not just important for Vashon on points, but at the same time, getting your kids the experience, like you said, of playing later on in the year, because you don't want to play a weak schedule and then turn around and you might have to win your district or be in a position to move forward in the state playoffs. And you might have the talent, but you don't have the experience playing against other schools who have had that experience and who have the same amount of talent as you.
And plus, too, you look at what happened with Vashon last year when they went down to the hostile environment down in North County in the sectional. Okay, you're going to go to, because and once again, I hate to say it, you don't get big crowds for the PHL games, but now Kirkwood Friday night, it is going to be packed. There is going to be everybody out. And it will get those kids that experience to play on the big stage in front of a big crowd and get them ready for what they're going to see later on down the line. So absolutely, I love what these guys are doing, putting this together for week 1 to get their kids ready to go.
Absolutely. And then we have Francis Howell at Fort Zumwalt North. Tell us a little bit about that. That's a little bit further than I'm used to seeing any of the games and
that's
whatnot.
Because you don't go across the river. Come on now.
I like staying around the county or going south. So you're the expert here, Jim. Why don't you give us a little bit of information here?
2 great coaches in the JAC, and once again, these two teams have hooked up over the last couple years in the early season, and 2 fantastic teams. Joe Bacon has built a program at Zumwalt North. He has absolutely taken this program in his 14 years and built them to be competitive for a state championship every single season. Last year they were 7-4, stubbed it, lost it in the district final. Not the season that they were expecting. This year they're going to lean on a new quarterback. They're going to lean on some kids up front that are young kids that didn't get a lot of playing time. But knowing Joe Bacon as well as I know, those kids are going to be ready to roll. And then Brett Chinaki over at Hal walks into a great situation and has just kept that program going in the right direction. The question is going to be with Hal is, what district are they going to get placed in? Are they going to get placed in District 2 with all the St. Charles teams and a few of the St. Louis County teams, or are they going to get put in the crossover with Columbia and a couple of the Kansas City teams? Because the way their schedule's set up, they can make a really, really good run. But the big thing, too, is you've got to play in that ultra-competitive GAC. And when you talk about how good Jefferson County football's gotten over the last couple of years, you look at St. Charles County, and you look at, Holt and Troy. What about that opener this week? We're not even going to talk about that. But 2 teams that came out of nowhere over the last couple of years. You talk about Hal. You talk about Zumwalt West. You talk about Deschênes. You talk about Lutheran St. Charles. The football in St. Charles County is off the charts right now, and you'll see some great matchups in the early season. But the bottom line is Zumwalt North, Hal, no love lost between the 2. It's going to be a fun game to watch over at Zumwalt North Friday night.
Yeah, the St. Charles football, they have a lot of talent. The teams, their records might not be great on the bottom end, but that's not saying that they're not good, because you're playing in a super competitive conference, or if you schedule non-conference schools that are around there, you're still playing against really good competition as well.
Without a doubt. And I still say this, and I've said it since the first week of December last year. If Holt has Cooper Brown at quarterback and he doesn't get hurt in a semifinal against Fort Osage, they beat Webb City in the state championship. And that would have given the St. Louis side 4 state champions in the top 4 divisions. And once again, that just shows the type of football that is out in St. Charles County.
Right. And it's just unfortunate how that happens, but
yeah.
you just got to play the hand you're dealt. Now we're going to talk about St. Mary's. They're going to travel to SLUH High and play the Junior Billikens. What do we know about that one?
Well, I tell you what, it's the pseudo battle of South Cities, so to say. Two schools that are separated by about maybe 5 miles. I mean, two great teams. St. Mary's, the defending state champs from last year, and they're expecting a bump up to 5. They're going to probably go from class 3 up to class 5. And in talking to Ken Turner, their head coach, he expected that. And that's why they scheduled the way that they scheduled. And a lot of people have been clamoring for years for these two teams to play, and finally that they're stepping up to the plate and getting it done. St. Mary's is returning a lot of kids from that championship team last year. Lost quite a few to graduation. Going to have a sophomore quarterback going out there for him, but he's still got two great kids out on the edges that he can get the ball to. Big thing for St. Mary's is going to be defensively, especially on the back end of their defense, because they're playing so many teams that are just pass happy and will run the spread and do all sorts of crazy things. And so it'll be interesting to see how that young secondary develops for the Dragons. St. Louis U High, it starts and stops with junior Ryan Wingo. Bottom line, he may be the best athlete in the metro area. Showed it last year as a sophomore. He's being recruited by everybody under the sun right now. Not only football-wise, he's an outstanding track and field kid, and he just gets that offense going. And interim head coach Adam Cruz is going to put him in spots that they can get him the ball and they can get things going. Don't be surprised if you see Wingo touching the ball at least 50 to 60% of the time on the offensive side of things. So, but they've got some big guys up front, great defense coming back. This will be a team that will be like a sleeper to watch in the MCC, depending upon how their early season goes, because then they've got some big matchups, obviously, with the SMET, with CBC later on down the line. And a lot of people are slotting them in that number 3, number 4 slot behind CBC to SMET. They're right there neck to neck with Chaminade. So they've got some big games on their schedule. If they can come out of this one healthy and put up a lot of big numbers, that's going to open a lot of people's eyes.
Right. And when you have athletes like that, you want to try to get them the ball as many times as you can. And especially if they're that high profile where they're being recruited by everybody, not only to create a highlight film for that player, but at the same time, put your team in a good position to win. So it's going to be a really exciting game. And the thing about, St. Mary's, I mean, yeah, they're probably going to get bumped up to class 5. That's just part of the championship factor in the world we live in with private schools and Bishop. But at the same time, with what they've been able to do, I look for them to be still extremely competitive. And I think this is a great game to have, especially week 1, just like we talked about, having that competition early.
Without a doubt, because then you look at their schedule later on down the line. They're going to play Lutheran St. Charles. They're going to play one of the top teams over in Illinois. I mean, this team, Ken Turner loaded up the schedule anticipating the bump up to 5. And once again, that's what coaches have to do these days with the championship factor, with the point system, and seeding the districts and all that kind of stuff. You have to do that. And Ken Turner has really done a nice job in navigating that to put his kids in games that will get them ready, especially if they bump to 5, to be very competitive in class 5.
Right. You want to be ready to roll right in there, just like you're not missing the beat. And here's an interesting game. I think this is pretty cool. CBC is going to be playing Milton, Georgia, but they're not playing in Georgia. They're not playing at CBC. They're actually playing at the Hall of Fame Stadium in Canton, Ohio. That's a pretty cool experience for any kid, no matter what. What do you know about that one, and how did that even come about?
Yeah, well, once again, it's a 2-day event that is running out in Canton, Ohio at Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium. And CBC was asked to play in it, and East St. Louis was asked to play in it. So CBC drew Milton, Georgia. Milton, Georgia, one of the absolute top teams in the state of Georgia. They are a team that is going to throw everything but the kitchen sink at you, basically, offensively. And for CBC, once again, it's a great, great thing for them to play some competition like that, because guess what? You come back, guess who you get the following week? You get Eastside the following week. Then you get SLUH High. Then you get the SMEC. That I asked Scott Pinkel, I said, who did you make mad to get you through that? But no, I mean, and Scott's got a great group coming back. The Love kid at running back is terrific. They got some big kids up front. They lost the quarterback, and I think Patrick Hyder, who's going down to SEMO, turned into be once again one of the best quarterbacks in the area last year. He was a lot of fun to watch, but you got some big shoes to fill there. But defensively, they return a lot back from a team that absolutely dismantled Liberty North in the state championship last year. And I mean, it wasn't even close defensively what CBC did to them. And a lot of people thought, that this Liberty North team had everything under the sun to throw at CBC, but CBC's defense was just terrific, and they're going to return a lot coming back from that year, from last year. But yeah, this is a great game. Get them on the road, a team building thing, team bonding. You're playing at 4:30 in the afternoon on Friday, and then you head on back. But to play at Hall of Fame Stadium, I'm familiar with that, being from Northeast Ohio. I used to go to when the state championships in Ohio were being held down between there and Paul Brown Stadium in Massillon. It's 30 minutes away from each other. We would go, start at Hall of Fame, go over to Paul Brown, come back, then the next day they'd flip it. It's just a great experience for the kids. And plus they're going to get the tour of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, get to see all the history, get to see, all that great stuff. So it's going to be a really cool thing for those kids.
Right. And I mean, that's the thing that it ultimately what you want that experience for them, because that's what that part of that team bonding thing. So I think that's absolutely huge. I think it's going to probably bring these kids together. I mean, I'm sure they got a tight group as it is, but at the same time, you're getting that opportunity for them. It's a cool experience to go and see the Hall of Fame. Plus, you're playing one of the best teams in the country. So like you said, when you come back,
yep,
it's like these guys will maybe not look as good as what we've seen. And you've seen some of the best of the best. But I think, again, we talked about how these matchups are going to help with experience moving forward. And I really think that this is another great example of great scheduling and taking advantage of that opportunity.
Without a doubt. And that's what you got to do. And you having a chance to go on the national stage. We saw it with East St. Louis last year. They played two of the top teams in the country, in John Bosco out in California, then IMG down in Florida. Well, guess what? The Cement's going to play MIG later on this year. So you're starting to see these local teams being recognized nationally and playing some of these big-time national programs. And once again, it's all about getting the kids ready for districts and getting them ready for the long run. And especially CBC DeSmet, they're going to be in the same district again. That is not going to change. So you better step up your scheduling philosophy, because you're going to end up playing twice. You're going to play in the regular season, and then you're playing in a district game somewhere, whether it's a semi or the district final. You've got to match game for game at that point.
Right. Well, Jim, hey, it's been a lot of fun. I think we're going to have some great stuff to talk about next week when we kind of review some of the games that we just had this week, talk about them, and then talk about some upcoming games as well. So appreciate you joining us here and being a part of it this morning, and look forward to seeing how things are going to go. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of without a doubt. We're going to do this every week, and we're going to get the on the road with the Caravan cranked back up here after everybody was so busy all summer and all that. We'll be doing our monthly shows as well. And every now and then I'll jump on the coach's box and talk about a lot of the great things going on in high school. But we're going to be doing this show every week and having a lot of fun with it.
Absolutely. If you don't have anything to do, if you're watching this and you want to watch some high school football for free, you don't feel like maybe getting out and driving, you can watch the Brentwood Eagles as they travel to St. Pius X to play the Lancers. You can watch that on the Coach's Box YouTube page, and you can check that out. It's free. We always just ask people to subscribe and be a part of that. And that's what we're trying to do, is bring you guys any kind of action, any kind of thing with high school sports. We want to make sure that it's free and accessible to you and your family.
And also make sure you tune in to scoopswithdannymac.com every day. I'll have coverage, starting on Mondays with the weekend wrap-up, our weekly polls on Tuesday, our student athletes of the week on Wednesday, our podcast on Thursday, and then, get you ready for the weekend on Fridays. So make sure you tune in, every day. Check out scoopswithdannymac.com for all that great coverage. And then Friday nights after all the football, you can catch me and the crew up at Fox 2 on the Prep Zone.
plenty of stuff to keep involved and informed about high school football in the area this fall. Jim, it's always a pleasure for you to come and hang out. And we're doing it on computer, but it's still a lot of fun. And just appreciate you joining us this morning.
No problem. Thanks a lot, buddy. We'll talk to you next week.
Appreciate everybody for tuning in. This has been On the Move with the Caravan Football Preview. We will see you guys for some Week 2 action next week. Have a great one.
Tune in for new episodes of Coach's Box each week on our Facebook page, YouTube channel, or the Streamline Sports app. Or you can listen to the audio version of our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, all for free. This episode of On the Move with the Caravan Football Preview with Jim Powers is brought to you by Scoops with Danny Mack and Off the Rails Media. Life's more fun when you're off the rails.